Dear friends, I don't know where I read it, but it is absolutely true. If a country is big and powerful, it does not act democratically or justly. And when it wants to act democratically and justly, it is no longer big or strong. Today, the great powers do literally what they want. They completely erased the existence of international law and the inevitability of its maintenance. Unfortunately, the OSCE is on its knees. And the Security Council of the OSCE, without reforms and the subsequent strengthening of its rule of law, is completely toothless. In a small country like Slovakia, we cannot do anything. We just look at how the U.S. elite military units will take the president of the sovereign country of Venezuela, and how the United States announces that it will rule the whole of Venezuela for 30 million. However, I have to admit to the U.S. President Donald Trump, his decision did not invalidate the false need to expand democracy or protect human rights. As the Biden administration would say, or any previous U.S. president, he spoke openly about the control over Venezuelan slaves and the entry of American companies into the Venezuelan slave industry. And then the old-fashioned, who wants to be a dog and burn what he finds, and that the purpose of the world is the means. The military attack on Iraq had the same motivation. However, the U.S. representatives did not have the courage to openly admit that there was a control over Iraqi slaves. But they spread nonsense about weapons of mass destruction or the connection of the Iraqi regime to terrorist structures, which was never confirmed. So, in addition to the official statement, I could, as the president of the government, do something symbolic. I decided to withdraw our soldiers from Iraq, which was sent there by the government of Nicolás Maduro. Just as I could, in addition to a political statement, veto the implementation of obligatory quotas for the placement of illegal migrants on the territory of Slovakia. Or I could really do something, with a crazy idea of the European Union to provide Ukraine with a military loan worth 90 billion euros when I withdrew Slovakia from this loan. When looking at Venezuela, we can't do anything in Slovakia. Maybe that was also the reason why yesterday more and more people in Slovakia warned me that we should be careful in criticizing the U.S. attack and the resignation of the president of Venezuela. You know the words of political tracers. Don't let it hurt us. Don't throw what doesn't burn us. Catch a thorn with other people's hands. It is true that there is an intergovernmental agreement on cooperation between the United States and Slovakia in the nuclear area on the table, which we care about because we want to build a completely new nuclear bloc in the Soviet origin. However, it would look ridiculous and inconvenient if I withdrew the soldiers from Iraq after withdrawing the obligatory quotas, rejecting the military use for Ukraine, and repeated statements that the use of Russian military forces in Ukraine is a violation of international law in the case of Venezuela, the purpose of which is unknown. Despite the fact that we cannot do anything, not even symbolically, and I will not do annoying things, I have to condemn and reject this further U.S.-European adventure. Even at the cost of my clear and consistent stance, it can politically worsen mutual Slovak-American relations for a certain time. There is no mistake here for me. If the U.S. president would have mentioned what Venezuela is about, as the president of a sovereign country, a country that respects international law, I have a duty to openly state my name. I have no desire to engage in the actions of the Slovak opposition under the leadership of an obedient Slovak, according to whom the incumbent president of a sovereign Venezuela will not miss anyone. It is exactly the same opposition, which, either directly or quietly tolerated in the years 2023, liquidated its political opponents by illegal closing and circumcision, combined with human sacrifices. The same opposition that made bets among themselves after the assassination, whether I will survive, and when the preliminary elections will take place, because the opposing activist, shooter, was not interested in anything else. The same opposition, which again threatens criminalization in the event that it takes power. Let the reaction of the opposition under the leadership of an obedient Slovak to the attack and resignation in Venezuela be another clear proof, and not only for the voting direction of the Slovak social democracy or other ruling parties, but also for the whole of Slovakia, who and with what equipment is oppressing their power through the dead. Dear friends, if Slovakia does not know how to do anything in addition to clear states to fix this gross violation of international law, there is one institution that has such power, but is incapable and hypocritical. And this institution is the European Union. The European Union has a substantially larger population than the United States. It is economically extremely strong. If it used this potential wisely, its voice would be very audible, and it would know often, not always, but often, to fix the gross ignorance of international law. The firm stance of the Union could even have a strong preventive effect and scare off the attempters of adventure on the international scene. For many years, I have been calling for the Union to have its own foreign policy, to get rid of the total influence of the United States, so that the ties of the United States and the European Union were not the ties of superiority and subordination, but mutually beneficial cooperation. Since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, I have been paying attention to the policy of one single correct political opinion, which is firmly politically suppressed by any deviation from the Brussels narrative. The European Union has a chance to break the shackle I mentioned at the beginning. It can be big, it can be strong, and at the same time it is truly democratic and just. However, the Union does not meet these criteria today with its own mistakes. We are eliminating our own industry with senseless climate goals. The national interests of the major member states of the Union dominate the interests of the entire institution. We cannot tolerate sovereign national policy. Another sovereign opinion. If in some country the winner is the one who was not supposed to win, the mechanism of suspicion and results of votes is immediately launched. It is completely normal that we have a double standard in a country that is genuinely interested in joining the Union. Let's look at what they are doing with Serbia. That is already disrespectful. In foreign policy, the European Union is dominated only by hatred and weakness. In the eyes of Russia, which in the institutions of the European Union enjoys incredible and incomprehensible hatred, the European Union is capable of entering the land of the abyss in anti-Russian attitudes. With the approved military loan, it is now 280 billion euros that the Union invested to support Ukraine in the war with Russia. Sanctioned packages, freezing of Russian assets, and I don't even know what else in exchange for the hatred in the eyes of Russia was born in the heads of the Brussels officials. These, of course, did not fall from the moon, but they are there for specific countries. If we need to react in various ways to the unacceptable humanitarian situation in Gaza, we are not even able to accept a joint position. It is not yet a concrete step. However, if we accept the novelization of the constitution in Slovakia, under which we know only 2 chapters, the European Commission will start a personal action against Slovakia. The same applies to the reaction of the European Union to Venezuela. Just so that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, does not get angry at us. As if we did not know for a long time that President Trump does not recognize the European Union as a whole and gives precedence to bilateral relations with individual member states. This is also due to the nomination of the former Estonian Prime Minister to the post of the so-called European Minister of Foreign Affairs. With all due respect to my former colleague in the European Council, I must openly say that at that time, the European Union needed a different, sharp-sighted speaker with sufficient respect. I do not want to complain, the European Union still has the opportunity to remember and become a real world power, democratic and just. Since the European Union is our living space, in my practical policy, I will do everything from the position of the president of the small country government so that the bilateralism and the ability to act of the European Union will not be undermined further. Dear friends, the decision to do politics on all four sides of the world, I consider the given circumstances to be the most pragmatic and most beneficial for Slovakia. I have experienced a period with the Soviet Union forever and never otherwise. I have experienced a period with the United States of America forever and never otherwise. We flew like a shark from one side to the other, from one extreme to the other. Dear friends, forever we must be only with Slovakia, our own, guard our own national and state interests, carefully monitor development on the international stage, protect sovereignty and national identity. All this only on the principle of consistent adherence to international law and on the basis of the OSN reform, to which I believe sooner or later it will come. World events confirm that no one, especially the weaker one, is without threats, that there is no point in sticking to one or the other power. For us, Slovakia, the best guarantee is a multipolar world based on good and friendly relations with everyone who is interested in such relations, regardless of whether they are in the West, East, North, or South. The service approaches we have seen in Slovak politics from 1998 to 2006, then in 2010, 2012, and especially in 2020-2023, represent the greatest danger for Slovakia. Everyone in the next parliamentary elections will have to think about this. Dear friends, and finally, even before the Second World War, we witnessed local conflicts, which led to the World War II. At the beginning of 2026, we are in a similar situation. We need to talk more about the measures. As I said in my speech on January 1st, the measure is not a profaned word. It must be the basis of our existence, of our work. I will never show up in peaceful activities. I will devote all my experience so that Slovakia is never dragged into any military adventure. And even if I sometimes have to make great efforts to solve conflicts, as the chairman of the government, I am here to ensure that the first priority of each member of the government is to fulfill the approved program of the government. However, we can only fulfill such a duty under peaceful conditions. Once again, peace is not everything, but without peace, everything is nothing. I wish you a nice Sunday. Let's enjoy a little more of the Christmas and New Year's atmosphere.